He died standing at attention, and the Inquisition let him. Castellan Warden Marcus Vrel had served the throne room guard for 43 years without incident. He had witnessed the passing of 3 Lord Commanders, weathered 2 assassination attempts, and stood vigil through countless ceremonies that ground lesser men into resignation. He knew every prayer, every protocol, every position of authority within the Golden Palace walls. But on the day Inquisitor Lord Torvin Malix walked into the throne room and executed the Master of the Administratum with a bolt round through the skull, Marcus realized he knew nothing at all. The execution happened at precisely 14 minutes past the 9th hour. Marcus had been standing post 7, left of the Bronze Gate, when the delegation arrived. 12 Inquisitors in black carapace armor. No announcement, no clearance codes. They simply walked through security as if the greatest fortress in the galaxy had opened its legs and begged for violation. The Master of the Administratum, Lord Scribe Hadrian Vrost, had been mid-sentence in his address to the Senatorum when the bolt shell vaporized his head. Pink mist where bureaucratic arrogance had been. The chamber fell silent. 10,000 dignitaries frozen in their seats like insects trapped in amber. Marcus's hand moved to his guardian spear. Training. Muscle memory. Protect the sanctity of the chamber. Inquisitor Lord Malix raised one gauntleted hand. Casual, like swatting a fly. "Stand down, Castellan." Marcus should have struck. Should have called the alarm. Should have died defending imperial law. Instead, he froze. Because in that raised hand, Malix held a document bound in black leather with golden clasps. Marcus couldn't read it from 70 meters away, but he recognized the seal pressed into the cover. The Emperor's own Aquila, done in obsidian wax. That seal meant one thing: absolute authority, direct from the Golden Throne itself, which was impossible. The Emperor hadn't spoken in 10,000 years. Malix's voice carried through the chamber without augmentation. By inquisitorial mandate, endorsed by unanimous conclave of all 3 Ordos Majoris and ratified under the seal of the throne, the High Lords of Terra are hereby dissolved. The Inquisition assumes direct governance of the Imperium, effective immediately. Someone screamed. A junior scribe in the 3rd gallery. The sound cut off abruptly. Marcus never learned if the man silenced himself or if someone silenced him permanently. The Fabricator General rose from his throne seat, his auto-tuned voice filling with harmonics of protest. "This is heresy. You have no—" The second bolt round shattered his primary processing core. He toppled backward in a cascade of blessed oils and sacred unguents, his mechadendrites writhing like dying serpents. 2 down, 10 to go. Marcus's heartbeat thundered in his ears. His hands trembled on his spear. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to act, to die with honor. But his feet remained planted. Because the seal was real. He could see it now as Malix descended the steps, the document held aloft like a holy relic. Captain General Trajan Valoris of the Adeptus Custodes stepped forward from the shadows behind the Golden Throne. His armor gleamed like molten sunlight, his guardian spear leveled at Malix's throat. If anyone could stop this madness, it would be him, the Emperor's own bodyguard, the most lethal warrior in the Imperium. "Explain yourself," Valoris said. His voice was winter itself. "Before I paint these walls with your entrails." Malix stopped 3 steps from the bottom. He didn't lower the document, didn't reach for his weapon. He simply smiled, a thin, predatory expression that never touched his eyes. "Read it, Captain General. The throne has spoken." Valoris snatched the document with blurring speed. His eyes, augmented to read tactical data at combat speeds, scanned the pages. Marcus watched the Captain General's expression. Watched for the moment he would strike. Watched for salvation. It never came. Valoris lowered the document slowly. His face had gone white beneath his helm. "Emperor's mercy," he whispered. Marcus felt the world tilt. If Valoris believed it, the Captain General turned to the remaining High Lords, and his voice carried the weight of absolute finality. "The document is authentic. The seal is genuine. The authority is absolute." He paused, and Marcus saw something he'd never witnessed in 43 years of service. He saw the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes look uncertain. The Inquisition now speaks with the Emperor's voice. The chamber erupted. Screaming. Accusations. The Lord Commander Militant of the Astra Militarum drew his plasma pistol. 3 inquisitors shot him before he could raise it. The ecclesiarch called for divine intervention. An inquisitor put a lash round through his knee. The Grand Provost Marshal invoked 12,000 pages of constitutional law. An inquisitor broke his jaw with an armored fist. Marcus watched it all happen. Watched the Imperium's government die in spasms of violence and legal protestation. Watched 10 men and women who had commanded the fate of 1,000,000 worlds reduced to corpses and cripples in less than 4 minutes. And he did nothing. Because the seal was real. Because Valorous, the Emperor's own champion, had authenticated it. Because for the first time in 10 millennia, the Golden Throne had issued a direct command. When the last High Lord fell, the Paternoval envoy, shot 12 times while trying to flee through the Eastern Gallery, silence reclaimed the chamber. Malix ascended to the central dais, his boots leaving bloody footprints on marble older than human interstellar civilization. He didn't sit on any of the High Lord thrones. Instead, he stood before them, surveying the chamber like a farmer evaluating livestock. The Imperium has been governed by incompetence and compromise for 10,000 years, he said. His voice was almost gentle, almost kind. It made Marcus's skin crawl. The Emperor, in his infinite wisdom and mercy, has finally broken his silence. He has looked upon his realm and found it wanting. He has looked upon his servants and found them corrupt. And he has chosen us, the Inquisition, to correct his vision. Malix gestured to the bodies cooling on the chamber floor. This is not a coup. This is correction. This is divine mandate made manifest. Marcus wanted to vomit. Wanted to scream, wanted to believe this was heresy of the highest order. But the seal was real. And if the Emperor had truly spoken, a hand gripped his shoulder. Marcus flinched, expecting execution. Instead, he found Interrogator Savine, one of Malix's inner circle, standing beside him. She was young, perhaps 30 standard years, with eyes that had seen too much. "You're being reassigned," she said quietly. "Report to Subchamber 12. You'll receive new orders there." "What orders?" She smiled. It was sad. "The purge is just beginning, Castellan. The Imperium has 10,000 years of corruption to excise. The Inquisition will need loyal servants. I serve the Emperor. Then you serve us now." She walked away, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the cooling bodies of the Imperium's leadership. He had died standing at attention. His honor, his oaths, his understanding of everything the Imperium represented, all dead, and the Inquisition had let him live. The first planet burned 3 days later. Marcus learned about it through official channels, or what passed for official now. The Administratum, what remained of it, operated under inquisitorial oversight. Every decision required inquisitorial approval. Every requisition needed an inquisitor's seal. The machine of imperial governance hadn't stopped, but it had changed drivers, and the new ones drove with hands that didn't flinch from blood. Praxis 4. An agri-world in Segmentum Solar. Population, 4 billion. Production, grain sufficient to feed 17 hive worlds. Strategic value, critical. Inquisitor Commandant Helax Vorn declared the entire planet's governing body complicit in sedition. The evidence, a single Vox transmission questioning the legitimacy of inquisitorial rule. The sentence, exterminatus, 4 billion souls, gone. Cyclonic torpedoes turning fertile soil into radioactive glass. Marcus read the report in Subchamber 12, surrounded by 40 other reassigned custodians and guard officers. None of them spoke. What could they say? The order bore Malix's personal seal, the Emperor's authority made manifest. But doubt gnawed at Marcus like acid on ceramite. 3 days. 3 days since the throne room massacre. That's what people were calling it in whispers, though never in inquisitorial hearing. 3 days, and already the Inquisition ruled with an iron fist that made the old High Lords look like indulgent grandparents. The briefing officer, a severe woman in inquisitorial black named Proctor Major Thessian, continued without inflection. Praxis of 4 represents a necessary correction. The Imperium cannot afford dissent during restructuring. The Emperor's vision requires absolute unity. Marcus raised his hand. Stupid. Dangerous. But he had to know. How did the Emperor speak? Silence crashed through the chamber like a pressure wave. 40 pairs of eyes locked on him. Thessian's expression didn't change, but her hand drifted toward the bolt pistol at her hip. Clarify your question, Castellan. Marcus's mouth had gone dry, but he forced the words out. The Emperor has been silent for 10,000 years. The Golden Throne is a life support system, not a communication device. How did he issue this mandate? Thessian studied him for a long moment. Marcus prepared to die. Instead, she smiled. Walk with me, Castellan Vrel. She led him from the chamber, through corridors Marcus had patrolled 1,000 times, but now felt alien. The walls seemed darker. The servo skulls that floated past had been modified. Their eye sockets now carried inquisitorial symbols. Even the air tasted different. Recycled through new filters bearing new allegiances, they arrived at an observation deck overlooking the Imperial Palace grounds. Through the armored glass, Marcus could see the cityscape of Terra stretching to the horizon. Hive spires, cathedral factories, the bones of humanity's cradle world wrapped in millennia of construction and devotion. Do you know the true history of the Inquisition? Thessian asked. Founded by Malcador the Sigillite at the Emperor's command, during the heresy. Correct. But do you know its purpose? Not the propaganda version. The truth. Marcus said nothing. Safer that way. Thessian continued. Malcador understood something the Emperor knew but couldn't speak aloud. That humanity requires watchdogs. That without constant vigilance, we devour ourselves from within. The Inquisition was never meant to be a tool of the High Lords. We were meant to be the Emperor's eyes when his own closed. His hands when his own could no longer move. His voice when his silence became absolute. She turned to face him, and her eyes held something Marcus couldn't quite identify. Belief. Madness? Both? The Emperor didn't speak, Castellan. He never will again. The throne is killing him by inches. Has been for 10,000 years. But his will, she tapped her temple. His will echoes. In dreams. In visions. In the psychic weight that presses down on every soul who approaches the throne. The custodes feel it. The Sisters of Silence know it. And the Inquisition has always understood it. Marcus felt ice crystallize in his chest. You forged the seal. We interpreted his will. The seal is real, blessed by the psychic resonance of the throne itself. The document is authentic, written by 12 Lord Inquisitors after communing with the Emperor's emanations for 6 months in the Chamber of Visions. The authority is absolute, because someone must govern, and the High Lords had failed. That's heresy. That's survival. Thessian's voice hardened. The Imperium is dying, Castellan. Has been for millennia. The High Lords squabbled while worlds burned. They politicked while Xenos empires carved chunks from our borders. They compromised while chaos corruption spread like cancer through every institution we hold sacred. The Emperor's vision was unity, purity, strength. The High Lords delivered division, corruption, and weakness. So you killed them. So we corrected course. Marcus stared at the cityscape, tried to find words, failed. Thessian's voice softened. I know what you're thinking. That this is a coup dressed in religious justification. That we're traitors wrapped in the Emperor's colors. But consider, if we are wrong, if we have acted against the Emperor's will, then surely the custodes would have struck us down. Surely Valores would have refused to authenticate the seal. Surely the throne itself would have rejected our communion. Unless Valores is complicit, or unless he knows something you don't. Thessian gestured to the palace. The Captain General has stood beside the throne for centuries. He knows the Emperor's will better than any living soul, and he authenticated our claim. He looked uncertain. He looked afraid. As well he should. The Emperor's will is a terrible thing, Castellan. It demands perfection in an imperfect universe. It requires sacrifice beyond measure. It accepts no compromise, no weakness, no mercy for those who fail his vision. She paused. The old Imperium failed. The new one will not, cannot. Because we will not allow it. A Vox unit chimed on Thessian's belt. She checked it, then turned to leave. You're being assigned to Lord Inquisitor Malix's personal detail, she said. Report to the Obsidian Sanctum at 1800 hours. Bring your oath of loyalty. The old one won't suffice anymore. Uchidua, she left Marcus alone with the view and his doubts. 4 billion dead. For a single questioned transmission. If this was the beginning, what would the end look like? The Obsidian Sanctum occupied what had once been the Hall of Senators, a vast chamber where thousands of lesser nobles and planetary governors would gather to petition the High Lords for favor. Malix had repurposed it into his command center with brutal efficiency. The senatorial seats were gone, replaced by tactical stations and hololithic displays showing real-time data from across the Imperium. Marcus arrived at precisely 1800 hours in full-dress uniform, his guardian spear polished to mirror brightness. 23 other custodians and 37 former throne room guards stood in formation beside him, all summoned, all uncertain, all carrying the same weight of compromised oaths. Malix descended from an elevated platform, flanked by 6 other Lord Inquisitors Marcus didn't recognize. Their armor bore markings from all 3 Ordos Majoris, Malleus, Hereticus, Xenos, plus symbols of a dozen minor Ordos. A unified Inquisition, something that shouldn't exist. The Inquisition prided itself on philosophical division, on competing ideologies keeping each other honest. This was different. This was consolidated power without internal checks. Kneel, Malix commanded. Marcus knelt. He told himself it was training, protocol, obedience to lawful authority. He didn't believe it. Malix walked along the line of kneeling warriors, his boots clicking against marble with metronomic precision. You are the Emperor's chosen. You have guarded his physical form, defended his palace, upheld his law. But law without evolution is death. Protocol without adaptation is suicide. You have served the Imperium that was. I ask you now to serve the Imperium that will be. He stopped before Marcus. Their eyes met. Castellan Warden Marcus Vrel. 43 years of exemplary service. 0 disciplinary incidents. Absolute loyalty to the Golden Throne. Tell me, Marcus, do you serve the Emperor or do you serve tradition? The question was a trap. Marcus could feel it. Answer wrong and die. But what was the right answer? I serve the Emperor's will, Marcus said carefully. And how do you know his will? Through those he has chosen to speak for him. Malix smiled. Diplomatic, wise, insufficient. He gestured to the hololithic displays dominating the chamber. Look, see what your service bought. The displays shifted, showing scenes from across the Imperium. Marcus recognized the tactical symbology. He'd studied strategic planning for decades. But the scale, segmentum solar, 14 worlds in open rebellion against inquisitorial rule. 8 declared independence. 6 pledged allegiance to renegade astartes chapters, refusing to acknowledge the new governance. Segmentum obscurus. The Ordo Malleus was executing planetary governors en masse for insufficient faith. Body counts in the billions. Segmentum pacificus. Entire subsectors had gone dark, cutting off astropathic communication rather than submit to inquisitorial oversight. Segmentum tempestus. Civil war between imperial navy fleets. Some captains accepted the new order. Others fired on inquisitorial vessels on sight. Ultima segmentum. Complete chaos. The Indomitus Crusade fleets, already stretched thin, now faced the choice between continuing Guilliman's work or returning to enforce inquisitorial authority. The Imperium was tearing itself apart. 3 days, Malix said quietly. 3 days since we assumed control, and look at the response. Rebellion, defiance, betrayal. Do you see now why the High Lords had to die? They cultivated this rot. They allowed planetary governors to believe they had autonomy. They permitted astartes chapters to operate without oversight. They created 1,000 little empires within the Imperium, each ruler thinking themselves beyond accountability. He turned back to Marcus. The Emperor's vision was never democracy, never federation. It was absolute unity under absolute authority. One Imperium, one will, no division, No compromise. No mercy for those who fracture that unity. Praxis 4, Marcus said. The words escaped before he could stop them. Praxis 4 questioned our authority. 4 billion voices raised in doubt. 4 billion infections that would have spread if left untreated. 4 billion necessary excisions to preserve the whole. Malix's voice held no regret, no hesitation. You think me cruel? Perhaps I am. But cruelty that preserves is virtue. Mercy that destroys is sin. The old imperium chose mercy and has been dying ever since. We choose preservation. Another inquisitor stepped forward. Lord Inquisitor Kessa Thorn of the Ordo Hereticus, her armor decorated with purity seals and prayer parchments. The Emperor suffers every moment on that throne, Castellan. Do you know why? Not to power the Astronomicon, though that's the lie we tell the masses. He suffers because humanity continues to fail him. Every act of corruption, every moment of doubt, every compromise with weakness, it all feeds back to the throne. And he feels it. 10,000 years of accumulated failure, pressing down on him with the weight of a galaxy. She moved closer, her voice dropping to something almost tender. We can end his suffering, but only through perfection. Only through an imperium that tolerates no flaw, no weakness, no deviation from his design. The High Lords lacked the will. We do not. Marcus's hands trembled. He gripped his spear tighter to hide it. What do you want from us? Your oath, Malix said simply. Not to the imperium as it was. Not to laws written by dead bureaucrats and enforced by tradition. Your oath to the Inquisition. To the Emperor's will made manifest through us. Your oath to perfection, no matter the cost. He gestured. An interrogator Savine emerged from the shadows carrying a black tome bound in what looked disturbingly like human skin. She opened it to a marked page covered in dense, high Gothic text. Speak the words, Malix commanded. Bind yourself to the new order. Or refuse, and die as the old order died, standing in defense of a dream that collapsed long ago. Marcus stared at the tome. He could see the oath written there, could read the promises it demanded. Total obedience, complete subordination, the surrender of individual judgment in favor of inquisitorial decree. Everything his original oath had stood against. Everything the Emperor's vision had supposedly rejected during the imperial truth. But the seal was real, and Valoris had authenticated it. Around him, custodians were rising. One by one, they approached the tome. One by one, they spoke the words. Even these, the Emperor's own champions, genetically perfected warriors whose sole purpose was defending him, even they bent their knees to the new order. If they could compromise. Marcus rose. His legs felt like lead. His spear weighed 1,000 tons. He walked forward, each step a small death, until he stood before the tome. Savine's eyes held sympathy and pity. Marcus spoke the words, heard his voice betray every principle he'd held sacred, felt something fundamental break inside his chest as the oath took hold. When he finished, Malix placed a hand on his shoulder. Welcome to the imperium that will be, the Lord Inquisitor said. Now help us build it. Marcus returned to formation, stood at attention, stared straight ahead, and realized with dawning horror that he'd just sworn loyalty to the thing he should have died fighting. The Inquisition ruled now, absolute, uncompromising, without mercy, and Marcus Vrel had just become its sword. When consciousness returned to Captain Orvanus Kale, he found himself suspended in a void that wasn't quite void, wasn't quite anything. His body felt distant, like a memory of flesh rather than flesh itself. Around him, fragments of his ship drifted in impossible orientations. A bulkhead floated vertically. A section of deck plating hung inverted. Navigator Esselin's chamber existed simultaneously in 3 different locations. Captain? Commander Parthis' voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Captain, can you hear me? Kyle tried to respond. His mouth moved, but sound took several seconds to catch up with the motion. When it did, his voice sounded wrong. Layered, as if multiple versions of himself spoke in unison. I'm here. Where are we? I don't know. Parthis materialized beside him, though his form flickered like a corrupted pict feed. The entity hit us, should have vaporized us, but instead, we're inside something. Inside. Kyle looked around with new understanding. They weren't drifting in space. They were trapped within the rift itself, swallowed whole by the wound in reality. Other crew members began appearing. Helmsman Torvich, his face pale and translucent. Gunnery Sergeant Folk, missing his left arm, though he didn't seem to notice. Navigator Esselin, her third eye exposed and blazing with unnatural light. How many survived? Kale asked. Parthis consulted a data slate that kept changing shape in his hands. I'm reading 2,314 life signs. Out of 4,000 crew. Half. They'd lost half the ship. Time check, Kale ordered. Torvich glanced at his chronometer, then glanced again. His expression twisted into confusion. Captain, according to this, we've been here for 3 seconds, but also for 3 years. The readings keep fluctuating. Kyle felt pressure building behind his eyes. Time had no meaning here. Space had no meaning. The fundamental laws that governed reality simply didn't apply. Navigator Esselin, Kyle turned to face her. Can you see a way out? She laughed, a broken sound that made Kale's skin crawl. Captain, I can see everything. Every possibility. Every timeline. Every version of us that ever existed or will exist or might exist. Her blazing third eye fixed on him. Do you want to know what I see when I look at you? No. I see a captain who dies 1,000 different ways. I see you surviving and becoming a champion of the Dark Gods. I see you reaching Terra and standing before the Golden Throne. I see you never having been born at all. They're all true, all simultaneously real. That's impossible. Impossible doesn't exist here. A scream echoed through the fragmented ship, then another. Kale recognized the voices. His crew, losing their minds to whatever madness permeated this place. We need to maintain order, Kale said, forcing authority into his voice. Parthis, organize search parties, find survivors, secure vital sections. We treat this like any emergency situation. Captain, with respect, this isn't... I gave you an order, Commander. Parthis hesitated, then nodded. He understood. Routine, purpose, structure. The things that kept human minds from shattering when faced with the incomprehensible. Days passed, or perhaps hours. The concept became meaningless. Kyle organized his remaining crew into watches, established patrol routes through the broken ship, rationed supplies that sometimes multiplied on their own and sometimes vanished entirely. People changed. Deck Officer Maris developed a second pair of eyes on his forehead. A ratings technician named Hollis started speaking in languages that hadn't been invented yet. 3 armsmen merged into a single entity that claimed to be all of them simultaneously. Kyle executed the merged thing, shot at himself with his bolt pistol. The act of violence felt necessary. A line in the sand. Humanity could only stretch so far before it stopped being humanity at all. Navigator Esselin spent most of her time at what remained of the observation deck, staring into the rift's depths. Kyle found her there during what he designated as the 15th day, though his chronometer insisted only 2 hours had passed since the first. What do you see out there? He asked. The war, she said simply. The war for everything. Chaos and order locked in eternal struggle. And we're caught in the middle. Insects trapped in amber. There has to be a way out. Does there? She turned to face him, and Kyle recoiled. Her third eye had grown larger, consuming half her face. What if this is all that's left? What if the Imperium already fell while we've been here? What if Guilliman died? What if Terra burned? Time doesn't work the same way out there as it does in here. Then we'll find out when we escape. If we escape. The doubt in her voice cut deeper than any blade. More time passed. Kyle's crew continued deteriorating. Some went mad. Some mutated. Some simply ceased existing, as if reality forgot they'd ever been there. Kyle felt the changes in himself too. His thoughts moved faster. Too fast. He could perceive multiple futures branching from every decision. Could see the consequences of actions he hadn't taken yet. It terrified him. This was how demons thought. How the warp itself experienced existence. and the longer they stayed here, the less human they became. On what Cale designated as the 30th day, Gunnery Sergeant Volk approached him with news that changed everything. "Captain, we found something. In the lower decks. You need to see it." Cale followed Volk down through twisted corridors that bent at angles that hurt to perceive. They passed through sections that flickered between different states of existence. A cargo bay that was simultaneously full and empty. A barracks where the same soldier died over and over in an infinite loop. Finally, they reached the lower armory. Or what used to be the lower armory. Now it was something else. A chamber that extended far larger than the ship's actual dimensions, its walls covered in symbols that writhed and changed when observed directly. And at the center, floating in a column of pale light, hung an object. A navigator's beacon. But wrong. Corrupted. Its light flickered between the golden warmth of the Astronomicon and the sickly purple of the warp. "What is it?" Cale whispered. "I don't know," Volk admitted. "But it's been calling to us. In our dreams. Some of the crew, they worship it now." Cale's hand went to his bolt pistol. "How many?" 30, maybe 40. "They say it's showing them the way home." "And you believe them?" Volk's expression hardened. "I believe we're dying here, Captain. Slowly. And if there's even a chance that thing can save us..." He left the thought unfinished. Cale approached the beacon. Up close he could hear it humming. Not with sound, but with something deeper. A vibration that resonated in his bones, in his thoughts, in his soul. And yes, it was calling. Offering promises. Safe passage. Salvation. A way out of this nightmare. All it wanted in return was worship. Cale raised his bolt pistol and fired. The round struck the beacon dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality screamed. The chamber collapsed inward, folding through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The beacon shattered into fragments of light that burned like acid. Cale felt agony lance through his mind as something vast and terrible turned its attention toward him. "You refuse our gift," a voice thundered inside his skull. "Then suffer." The world exploded into chaos. Cale woke on the bridge. How he'd gotten there, he couldn't remember. Commander Parthis stood over him, medical kit in hand. "Captain, you've been unconscious for 6 hours. What happened down there?" Cale sat up, his head pounding. "The beacon. I destroyed it." "Yes, and killed everyone who'd been worshipping it. The moment it shattered, they just stopped. Hearts ceased. Brain function terminated. 37 dead. 37 souls." Cale added them to the weight he already carried. "Good," he said coldly. "They chose corruption. I chose survival." "At what cost?" Parthis's voice carried an edge Cale had never heard before. "We're trapped here, Captain. That beacon might have been our only way out. It was a lie. A trap. You know this." "Do I?" Parthis leaned close. "What I know is that we're dying. What I know is that you executed our only hope because you're too proud to accept help. Even from the enemy. That's enough, Commander." "Is it? Look around, Captain. Look at what we've become. Half the crew is gone. The other half is mutating. Navigator Esselin can barely remember what being human means. And you, when was the last time you looked in a mirror?" Cale hadn't. Deliberately. Because he knew what he'd see. "Get off my bridge," Cale said quietly. Parthis stared at him for a long moment, then turned and left without saluting. Cale sat alone, feeling the ship's dying heartbeat through the deck plates. The valiant truth was falling apart. Not just physically, spiritually. The very concept of what the ship represented was eroding. And without it, what were they? Just ghosts. Shadows. Echoes of an empire that might already be extinct. Navigator Esselin appeared beside him like a phantom. Her entire body now glowed with that terrible third eye light. "I found it," she whispered. "Found what?" "The way out. But Captain, you're not going to like it." She showed him, not through words or charts, but by opening his mind to her vision. Cale saw the rift structure from the inside. Saw the currents of warp energy that flowed like rivers through madness. Saw the weak points where reality was thin enough to pierce. And saw what would be required to reach one. "No," Cale said immediately. "It's the only way. I won't do it. Then we die here. All of us. Lost forever. Kyle wanted to argue. Wanted to find another option. But he'd been a naval officer for 30 years. He knew when he was beaten. Explain it to me, he said finally. Esselin's vision showed him the truth. To escape the rift, they needed power. Massive amounts of warp energy. Enough to punch through reality itself. And the only source available was right in front of them. Each other. The crew, Kale said, his voice hollow. You want to sacrifice the crew. Not all of them. Just enough. 500 souls should suffice. Their life force, properly channeled through me, would generate enough psychic pressure to create an exit wound in reality. The rest of us could escape. 500 lives. In exchange for 1,500 survivors. It was the mathematics of survival. The cold calculus that officers made every day during war. But this felt different. This felt like murder. There has to be another way, Kyle insisted. There isn't. I've seen every possibility, Captain. Every timeline. This is the only one where any of us survive. Esselin's glowing eyes bored into him. The question is whether you have the courage to make the choice. Kyle stood, walked to the viewport, stared into the rift's endless chaos. He thought about Guilliman, the Primarch who'd made his own terrible choice. Save half the Imperium. Let the other half burn. Was this any different? If I give the order, Kyle said slowly, how would it work? Volunteers first. Those who understand the sacrifice. The dying. The wounded beyond recovery. Then if we're still short, she didn't finish. Then we draw lots. Yes, Kyle closed his eyes. Imagined the faces of his crew. Imagined telling them that hundreds would die so thousands could live. Give me 1 day, he said. 1 day to find an alternative. Captain, 1 day, navigator. Then I'll make my decision. She faded away without responding. Kyle spent the day searching. Consulted every data archive. Interviewed every surviving tech priest. Examined every theory about warp travel, reality manipulation, emergency translation. Nothing. Esselin was right. The mathematics were absolute. When the designated day ended, Kyle called a ship-wide assembly. His entire surviving crew gathered in what remained of the main hangar bay. 2,314 souls. All staring at him with eyes that had seen too much. He told them the truth. All of it. The beacon he'd destroyed. The escape that required sacrifice. The choice that had to be made. I will not order this, Kale said, his voice echoing through the hangar. I will not condemn anyone, but I will ask, who among you has the strength to give everything so that others might survive? Silence. Then, slowly, Deck Officer Maris stepped forward. His extra eyes wept. I volunteer, Captain. I'm already lost. Might as well mean something. Another stepped forward. Then another. The dying. The mutated. The ones who knew they were already gone. By the end, 437 had volunteered. 63 short of what was needed. Kale looked at the remaining crew. Saw the fear in their eyes. The desperate hope that the lots wouldn't fall on them. We draw, Kale said simply. They used bullet casings. 63 marked. The rest unmarked. Every crew member drew one. Kale drew last. When he opened his palm, he saw the mark. Commander Parthis appeared beside him. Captain, you can't... I drew it, Kale interrupted. I'll honor it. Sir, you're the commanding officer. The ship needs a crew that believes their captain keeps his word. Kale met Parthis's eyes. Take command, Commander. Get them home. That's an order. Parthis's jaw worked. Then he saluted. Properly this time. Yes, sir. The 500 gathered in the lower decks. Navigator Esselin waited there, her body now more light than flesh. Around her, tech priests had constructed a makeshift psi resonator using salvaged equipment. It will be quick, Esselin promised. Your souls will fuel the escape, and in doing so, you'll save everyone else. Will it hurt? Someone asked. Yes, Esselin said truthfully, but only for a moment. Kyle stood among the condemned, feeling strangely calm. This was it, the end of his journey, the final order. He thought about the Imperium, about Guilliman fighting his war on the other side of the galaxy, about all the worlds like Kardunyash dying alone in the darkness. He thought about what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, to give everything so that something, anything, might endure. "Begin," Kyle ordered. Esselin's third eye opened fully. Reality screamed. Kyle felt his soul being pulled from his body, felt it stretched, compressed, converted into raw energy. The pain was absolute, infinite, a burning that consumed everything he was. But through the agony, he felt something else. Purpose. His death meant something. His sacrifice mattered. The 500 souls merged into a single point of light, a star born from flesh and will and desperate hope. And that star detonated. Commander Parthis stood on the bridge of the Valiant Truth and watched the impossible happen. A tear opened in reality. Not gentle, not clean. A wound ripped through the rift's fabric by sheer force of sacrificed souls. "All hands, brace for emergency translation," he roared. The ship lurched, engines howling. Geller field straining. The tear pulled them forward, through layers of madness, through the screaming chaos, through the fundamental wrongness of the rift itself. And then, suddenly, stars. Real stars. Normal space. The blessed void. "Position," Parthis demanded. "Checking. We're in the Nachmund Gauntlet, sir. Clear of the rift. Sensors detecting Imperial traffic. We made it." The bridge erupted in cheers. 1,500 voices raised in triumph and relief and grief. They'd escaped, at the cost of 500 souls. Parthis looked at the empty command lectern where Captain Kyle should have been standing, felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a shroud. "All hands," he spoke into the Vox. "Captain Orvanas Kale and 499 others gave their lives so that we might survive. We will honor their sacrifice by living, by fighting, by ensuring the Imperium endures." He paused, feeling tears on his face. "The Emperor protects." The response came back, smaller now, diminished but still defiant. "The Emperor protects." 6 months later, Commander Parthis, now Captain Parthis, stood in the ornate briefing chamber on Macragge. Around him sat officials from the Administratum, representatives from the Ultramarines chapter, and a single towering figure in blue armor, Lord Commander Roboute Guilliman. The Primarch listened as Parthis delivered his report. The fall of Kar Dunyash. The ships lost attempting to cross the rift. The sacrifice required to escape. When Parthis finished, silence filled the chamber. Finally, Guilliman spoke. His voice carried the weight of 10,000 years. "You understand what your testimony confirms, Captain. That half the Imperium is beyond our immediate reach. That millions of worlds face extinction without reinforcement. That the crusade I launched, despite its successes, has failed to reunite humanity." "Yes, my lord." Guilliman stood, walked to a massive star chart displaying the galaxy. The rift carved through it like a wound. On one side, Imperium Sanctus glowed with markers indicating crusade victories. On the other, Imperium Nihilus sat shrouded in darkness. "I made a choice," Guilliman said quietly. "Prioritize what could be saved. Stabilize the realms still connected to Terra. It was the logical decision, the strategic decision." He turned, and Parthis saw something in the Primarch's eyes he didn't expect. Guilt. But logic does not comfort the dying. Strategy does not save the damned. And every day, I wonder if I chose correctly, or if I simply chose the easier path. My lord, you saved billions, and condemned billions more. Guilliman's fist clenched. Your Captain Kyle, he made the hardest choice, sacrificed himself so others might live. That is the choice I face every day. How many do I sacrifice? How many do I save? Where is the line? Parthis had no answer. Guilliman returned to the star chart, his armored fingers tracing the rift's outline. "I will not abandon the Imperium Nihilus. I have appointed Commander Dante as regent there, given him what forces I can spare. But it is not enough. It will never be enough." He looked at Parthis directly. "Tell me, Captain, if I had been there, if I had arrived with my crusade 6 months earlier, would your crew still be alive?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Parthis wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that the Primarch's presence could have changed everything. But he'd seen the truth. had watched reality itself tear apart, had witnessed the scale of catastrophe that no single being, not even a Primarch, could prevent. "I don't know, my lord," Parthis said honestly. Perhaps not. But what I do know is that our sacrifice meant something. Because we believed the Imperium still stood. Because we believed you were out there, fighting for humanity's survival. Even if I never reached you. Especially then." Guilliman was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You will take command of a new frigate, Captain Parthis. Return to the Nachmund Gauntlet. Establish a permanent watch station. Bring out everyone you can. Tell them that humanity endures. Tell them that we have not forgotten them." "Yes, my lord." "And Captain," Guilliman's expression hardened, "tell them that if they must make the choice your Captain Kale made, if they must sacrifice everything, then let it be in the Emperor's name. Let their deaths purchase time. Let their souls fuel the war." Parthis saluted. "It will be done, my lord." 3 years later, Captain Parthis commanded the frigate Unbroken Vigil at the edge of the Nachmund Gauntlet. His mission: guide refugees from Imperium Nihilus to safety. Extract Imperial forces trapped behind the rift. Maintain the watch. In 3 years, he'd saved 200,000 souls. He'd also watched 10 million die. Ships that couldn't make the crossing. Worlds that fell to chaos or Xenos before help arrived. Desperate last transmissions from systems being consumed by the rift's expansion. Each one carved another scar into Parthis's soul. But he continued, because that's what Kyle would have done. Because that's what duty demanded. One night, though time near the rift remained unreliable, Parthis stood at his viewport, watching the crimson scar pulse across the stars. His navigator, a young woman named Selen who'd replaced the lost Esselin, approached him. "Captain, incoming distress signal. Civilian transport. They say they're from Karduniash." Parthis felt his heart skip. Karduniash? That world should have fallen years ago. According to their transmission, Governor Hectus implemented emergency rationing, executed a fifth of the population to preserve resources, turned the planet into a fortress. They've survived, sir. Barely, but survived. Parthis allowed himself a rare smile. Then let's bring them home. As the Unbroken Vigil moved to intercept the transport, Parthis thought about Captain Kyle, about his sacrifice, about the choice he'd made so that others might live. And Parthis understood finally what Guilliman had meant. The Imperium endured not because of grand crusades or Primarch interventions. It endured because of individuals, captains who sacrificed themselves, governors who made impossible choices, navigators who burned their souls to light the way. It endured because humanity refused to die quietly. Somewhere, on the other side of the galaxy, Roboute Guilliman waged his war, reclaimed worlds, stabilized sectors, built the future. But here, in the darkness between the stars, Captain Parthis fought his own war. A smaller war, a quieter war, but no less important. Because every soul saved was a victory. Every refugee brought home was a blow against the darkness. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The Unbroken Vigil rendezvoused with the transport from Karduniash. As survivors began transferring aboard, Parthis received their manifest. 3,000 souls. All that remained of a world of 3 billion. But 3,000 more than would have lived if no one had cared. If no one had kept the watch. "The Emperor protects," Parthis whispered. And for the first time in years, he believed it. Not because the Emperor actively intervened. Not because divine miracles saved the faithful. But because humanity, in its stubborn, defiant, beautiful refusal to surrender, protected itself. One sacrifice at a time. One choice at a time. One life at a time. And in a galaxy torn apart by a Primarch who never reached them, that would have to be enough.